In Star Wars The Old Republic, I recently got to level cap on my Sith Warrior character, and today I'm going to review the class for you all. I'm going to discuss the pros and the cons of the Sith Warrior story, as well as the gameplay itself. Mostly the story though, since Star Wars The Old Republic is primarily a story-based game. And after we go over all that, we're going to give the class a rating at the end. Caution, spoilers ahead. The story. Pros. Number 1. The Sith Warrior storyline is all about proving your power and your worth to the galaxy, and this theme is established right at the beginning with having to prove your superiority over your classmates to impress your future master. Sith Warrior has a great introduction to the game. I loved it. 2. Darth Barris the Wide, as the community has so rightly memed him, is the perfect Sith Master. He's cold, calculating, and manipulative. You immediately want to surpass him in power the moment he first looks down on you at your first meeting, and your hatred for him only grows throughout the storyline. 3. Eventually, you'll start getting companions for your Sith Warrior. The first 3 were awesome. That's Vet, Quinn, and Jaisa. I even got an HK droid at one point, which was a bonus. The last 2 companions, though, I admit, not the biggest fan of. The Random Soldier and the Bug Monster. This thing's scary. Number 4. Manipulating Jaisa to leave her Jedi Master to become your apprentice, and then seducing her to become a concubine for you, well, that was kind of pleasing, to say the least. Number 5. The whole point of the Sith Warrior storyline is to make you feel like you're Darth Vader. You're big, buff, and powerful. Nobody messes with you without getting force choked or cut in half like cheese. The Sith Warrior definitely sells this vibe as you go throughout the galaxy, striking terror into people's hearts. You're kind of like this big galactic bully of sorts, hopping from planet to planet. And it's a lot of fun. Keeps you interested. Number 6. Once you go rogue against your master, you really do become hell-bent on killing him and proving yourself over his power. I'm glad the game doesn't let this happen immediately either. Instead, you focus on taking down Barris's support network, undoing his plans, and so on until ultimately facing him in front of the Dark Council. 7. Learning that Darth Barris had a second apprentice who he placed in the service of his rival was awesome. Dra, or however you pronounce his name, he first comes off as this honorable and cool guy, but when he ultimately betrays you, which, we did know was going to happen, Sith and all that, it felt great from a story perspective. And when he returns again later in the game as a cyborg to fight you again, now that was cool. Number 8. Becoming the Emperor's Wrath in the beginning felt perfect. You're this big, unstoppable force of nature, and now you're in service to the Emperor himself. At least until you're forced to betray him later on in Fallen Empire, which does kinda suck, but again, up until that point, you're really being sold on this Darth Vader vibe, serving the Emperor and all that. Number 9. The story has a very satisfying conclusion when you get to finally confront Darth Barris the Wide in front of the Dark Council. You almost feel bad for your master as you defeat him, as he worked so hard to get where he was, only to have his honor stolen by you in this moment of near triumph. But I suppose that's kind of the Sith way, so
this is the way.
And number 10. Being acknowledged as the Emperor's Wrath by the Dark Council at the end of the story of the base game is very satisfying, especially since the Emperor's Wrath has this vibe going for it that the Council fears you and what you're capable of in the Emperor's name. Now for the bad. Number 1. I feel like they could have explored the tragedy of Sith philosophy more with the Warrior storyline. The Sith are very Nixxiom in nature. They believe only in power and victory, which leaves them as these vacuum-like personalities. They're always trying to absorb every chance at power and opportunity around them. They have no real loyalty to anybody but themselves. They have no real friends, no allies, and their entire existence is so materialistic that they're doomed to this life of depression and despair the moment that they realize that their power and so-called victories will never fill the emptiness that they have within. Number 2. I would have liked to have seen more betrayal of the player's Sith Warrior character. We did get some, to be fair, but I think more would have sold the Sith Warrior vibe further. Just my opinion. Number 3. More moments where the Sith Warrior doubts himself and his motives. The Sith Warrior is very much hell-bent on power and success, but there's never really a moment where he slows down and considers what he's doing and ponders on whether or not it's right. And if there was a moment like this, I guess kind of like point number 2, I don't remember it. Number 4. Harder choices that reflect the errors of the Sith worldview. I really would have liked to have seen my rampant dark side actions getting my friends killed more often, or choices leading me to losing honors and positions I once held. I actually think it would have been very satisfying if, at the end of the Sith Warrior storyline, you achieve nothing. The Dark Council just strips you of your Emperor's Wrath title, and you're forced to keep eternally struggling for power and recognition, and this just goes on forever, because that's what the Sith worldview is. And number 5. Admittingly, you kind of feel like a giant moron compared to your master. Darth Barriss has this entire network of spies, infiltrators, bribed politicians, and so on. You're just some dumb grunt with big muscles. In the end, you do ultimately become more powerful than Barriss, and you're able to defeat him, but you certainly don't feel as capable as your master was in terms of connections. But maybe that's the point. You know, your character is stronger than Barriss, you're able to defeat him, but were you really stronger, or were you just able to swing your lightsaber faster and harder?
That's what she said.
Number 6. I will say that the Sith Inquisitor storyline feels more satisfying than the Sith Warrior so far, even though I haven't yet finished it. I'm only about halfway through. It feels almost like Barriss should have been the Inquisitor's master instead. That's personal opinion. You know, using spies and infiltration to rule the galaxy. Barriss also tends to use Force lightning a lot, just like an Inquisitor does, but I guess they just really wanted to give off the whole Palpatine and Darth Vader vibe with Barriss and the player character. So now let's talk about gameplay. The good. Number 1, the Sith Warrior is a very mobile class. They like to jump around a lot, and these guys did not skip leg day, let me tell you what. Leaping from enemy to enemy, so much fun. Number 2, the class is meant to always make an entrance, and the abilities reflect this. There's the leaping into the enemies, smashing the ground, force screams, big slashes with your lightsaber. You feel like a living boulder playing the Sith Warrior, and it's great. Number 3, the class is a ton of fun to tank with. It was designed for tanking, and so if that's your fancy, this is your class. For me, I leveled as a tank, and I felt that it fit the vibe of the class way better than the DPS counterpart. Number 4. Before you ask, no, I did not think that the tanking spec felt weak or slow in regards to level speed. I got through things just fine. Number 5. Force choking people as a crowd control ability was hilariously creative. I loved it. I loved doing it. It was great. The bad. Number 1. The class sort of feels slow when it comes to using abilities. There was a lot of waiting for global cooldowns, and I don't know, just felt slow. 2. The Sith Warrior is lacking in a really cool series of abilities, I feel. You know, the Sorcerer, the Inquisitor, has the Force Storm ability where they bring down a rain of lightning, and that's awesome looking. Sith Warriors need some sort of cool ability too that really, you know, you're always excited to use it other than just a defensive cooldown for when you're tanking, at least in my opinion. All in all, I'm giving the Sith Warrior a 7 out of 10 on this list. It certainly is a fun class to play as, especially if you are a fan of Darth Vader, but the lack of depth in the storytelling in the base game definitely pulls it down in terms of score. If you're someone that loves tanking though, you want to have your very own Sith apprentice that you can seduce, or you just really want to be the character that strikes fear into the hearts of the Dark Council themselves, being the Emperor's Wrath and all, this is the class for you.